Okay, so we have our second speaker, and we're so grateful that she's here. She's actually from Sonoma County, was away from us for a little while, not too far down in the Bay Area, but she has come back and blessed us in Sonoma County again. And it's Lauren Ornelas, and she is the founder and director of the Food Empowerment Project. It's a vegan food justice nonprofit seeking to create a more just world by helping consumers recognize the power of their food choices. The Food Empowerment Project works in solidarity with farm workers, advocates for chocolate not sourced from child labor, and I'm sure you're going to be hearing and learning about that, focuses on access to healthy food in communities of color and low-income communities. And while Lauren was the director of Viva USA, she investigated factory farms and ran consumer campaigns in cooperation with activists across the country, and she persuaded Trader Joe's to stop selling all duck meat. And she was also the spark that got founder, I don't remember his name, I don't have it down here. Anyway, the Whole Foods
John
Mackey, sorry, I couldn't remember his name, to become a vegan. So she served as campaigns director with the now she is serving as campaigns director with the Silicon Valley Toxis Coalition. She's done that for 6 years, as well as being the director of Food Empowerment Project. Please welcome Lauren Ornelas.
Make sure I don't stand in front of that. Thanks, Hope, and I'm really excited to be here, and I'm excited this event is taking place, and I love the fact that there is a consciousness to have speakers who live in Sonoma County to remind all of us that we are our own experts, we are our own voices in our own community, and I think that's really important that everybody remember that you don't have to have people from Washington, D.C. come in to talk about issues that we know about and that we have experts here. So, and I want to thank you all for coming. I know this is a little bit a different type of topic. It is called Eat Your Ethics. And the reason why is because Food Empowerment Project's mission is to remind people that oppression is oppression and no matter what form it takes. And that it's all connected. And so what we try and help people do is connect these dots. If you care about making a difference in the world, every time you eat, you can make a difference. We are a all-volunteer organization at this point, so everything that I talk about, everything that you hear that we're doing is actually done by volunteers, some of whom are in this room, and we thank you very much for everything you've done to help us grow. So I'm going to quickly go over, I don't know the best place for me to stand where I'm not in everybody's way, but I'll try and be really skinny and go right here. I'm going to quickly go over these issues today, and I acknowledge that I'm going to be going over them very quickly, but we do have a table indoors that you can go to, and I'm happy to talk more about all of these issues. But I'm going to talk about animals raised and killed for food, farm workers, environmental racism, chocolate and the worst forms of child labor, corporate malfeasance, access to healthy foods, and most importantly, what you can do. So I always like to start with Quincy, because Quincy is a duck who, to me, represents well, he's just adorable, right? And I'm in love with him. And he represents why it is that Food Empowerment Project is a vegan organization and why veganism is one of the core tenets of what we do. And that's because Quincy has a right to his life. Quincy has a right to experience and to do the things that are more natural to him. He's a duck. He deserves to be in the water. He deserves to be outside. He deserves to have grass under his little webbed feet. And this animal is a feeling individual. And he has a right to that life without anybody taking away from him, without somebody cutting the tips of his bill off. Because in such cramped quarters and factory farms, that's what they would do to him. So Quincy is the epitome of why we really focus and strive to get people to recognize that by going vegan, when you hear me talk about some of these other issues, going veganism for some people is a very easy way to try and stop some of the suffering and injustice that's taking place in the world right now. I've done many investigations of factory farms, slaughterhouses in California, around the United States, and found animals living in horrific conditions. I have videotaped mother pigs who are pregnant when they're living in, they are kept in what's called gestation crates when they're pregnant. That's been banned in California. It's been banned in some places around the world, but what has not been banned is completely legal around the world are the farrowing crates, which is where the mother pigs are sent right before they give birth, and this is where they have their babies. These crates, too, are so small that these mother pigs can't turn around and can't even take a free step. I videotaped pigs die right in front of me in North Carolina with huge ulcerations underneath their stomachs, breathing slowly, keeled over, and eventually died as I was videotaping. By the way, these pictures are all from Woodstock Sanctuary in upstate New York. These are some hens. You know, one of the things, I've investigated a lot of egg factories as well as chickens who are raised for their flesh. But one of the things about eggs is that it doesn't really matter what size the farm is. You'll hear people talk about cage-free or free-range. It doesn't really matter when you're looking at the treatment of these animals. And the reason why is because there's victims who you never see, who actually never even see the light of day. And that's the little baby male chicks who are killed no matter what, free-range, cage-free, it doesn't matter. The male chicks are absolutely useless to this industry. In the state of California, we try to get a law passed to prevent hens from being thrown live into wood chippers, to try and get these baby chicks to stop being thrown in maceration machines where they'd be chopped up while they're still alive, to try and prevent them from being thrown in plastic bags and suffocated. And we couldn't even get this bill out of committee because the agriculture industry is so powerful in California. The poultry representative even said to me, if we want to burn these animals alive, we should have the right to. And that's their opinion. And that's why it doesn't matter what size the farms are. It's still part of the animal agriculture industry. I also videotaped many dairy farms in California and around the U.S. And one of the things that, again, doesn't matter what size the farm is or how they claim these animals are being treated. We're talking about mothers who are separated from their babies. Many times they separate these babies from their moms immediately after birth because the moms are going to fight to be with their babies. And that's exactly what they do. They fight. This is some of the audio recording that I took of a mother and a baby crying back and forth to each other. Let's hope it works. The baby and the mom are bellowing back and forth to each other. And you can actually watch the video that I took. It's online. But the mom and the baby are bellowing back and forth to each other. It's the most excruciating noise of this baby crying back to her mom. Farms that I didn't investigate are fish, because I couldn't scuba dive, I guess. But this industry, again, is another one that shows us how they think of animals. Animals who are killed in the fishing industry, whether it be in farms or be in commercial fishing, they call these animals and they consider them, the amount killed, into tons. They don't even recognize that these individual fish are different little beings, that they're individuals with their own personalities. A lot of studies have been done lately to talk about the feelings of fish. And one of the things that's even come up is how some fish, carp, will actually stay away from hooks for up to a year after they've been exposed to the pain. They remember what the pain was, and they stay away. So we don't talk a lot about fish. You don't hear a lot of them, but we're decimating our oceans. And the only way we can stop doing that and killing our oceans, killing everybody inside, is to stop eating all animals who come from the sea. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about environmental racism. People here familiar with the term environmental racism? It's a form of racism that takes place when one portion of the population is disproportionately impacted by negative pollutants in the environment. So here in the Bay Area, we know that we have Richmond, which has the oil refineries, and it's predominantly where communities of color live. You have the ports in Oakland. You have all over the South Bay where people are living near toxic dumps and waste plants. It's no different from factory farms, unfortunately. It's the exact same thing. You have in North Carolina where you have predominantly black communities living there. They're living near these pig farms where they experience nosebleeds, headaches. They can't even open their windows in the summertime because the flies are so bad. And I videotaped pigs in North Carolina. And it took me 6 times I had to shower to get the smell of the pig farms out of my hair. Pig farms are some of the worst smelling farms out there. Communities living in these areas, they also have their property values drop. Who's going to want to live in a house that's located near one of these facilities? In California, it's no different. This is a photo of a farm in California where you have some farms as large as 28,000 cows living in them. According to the EPA, that governs California, one of the most pressing environmental crises in California is caused by the dairy industry. One dairy cow produces 120 pounds of wet manure per day. They don't even go on to say it's just the farms that have 17,000, 28,000 cows on it. They're also talking about the farms here in Marin and Sonoma County, where the fact is they're dropping manure and it's rolling down the sides of the hills and going into our creeks. In the Central Valley in California, where you predominantly have Latino communities living, they have some of the highest rates of asthma in the country because of all the pollutants being kicked up and the dust that's impacting them. So here's a little bit, sorry, about California. But when we're talking about, when Food Empowerment talks about the fact that we want people to go vegan because we want to eliminate some of the suffering that's happening to non-human animals, we can't walk around and act as if our food supply is therefore not impacted by injustices. You have 3 million farm workers in the United States working. About 400,000 of these farm workers are children. Children who are not covered by any types of laws, pretty much because they're loopholes in what's governing to protecting all farm workers, not just the children. The average age of strawberry pickers is approximately 49 years old. Where they live ranges from living in cardboard boxes to their pickup trucks to along the creeks and the rivers in California to labor camps. We're currently working to try and change a law in California. The law governs that those farm workers living in labor camps, if they close the labor camps during non-picking season, okay? And if these farm workers have children, they have to move out of the labor camp when it's not picking season, and they're required to live 50 miles away from that labor camp. So if that child is still in school, they're not able to stay in school. And it's greatly impacted the education of these farm worker children. So we're trying to change that law in California and figure out, let's at least, if they can, live in the same community so their child could finish out the school year. Farm workers live, like I said, in deplorable conditions. They also work in horrible conditions. They work 8 to 14 hours a day. Lots of injuries from the types of jobs that they do. Again, they don't have health care. They don't have any type of, there's nothing that says that they have to get paid overtime. And these are people who are picking our food, not just the food of vegans, but everybody. And everybody owes it to the farm workers for everything that they put on our plates, not just in California, around the country and even around the world. And this is how we treat them. The Coalition of Immokalee Workers, who I hope most of you are familiar with, all they're asking for is a penny more per pound for the tomatoes that they pick. A penny more. And companies like Wendy's and Publix, which is a grocery store chain in the Southeast, are fighting them for just a penny more per pound. It's outrageous. So Food Empowerment Project works to change regulations and promote legislation that advocates for the rights of farm workers. But we also do on-hands work to try and get school supplies into the hands of the children. This is a photo from a labor camp in California where we got school supplies donated for these children. And if some of you in this room donated to that, thank you. We were able to get over 40 backpacks and a whole bunch of school supplies donated to these children so we could help with their education, and the only way that we know how. And when it comes to farm worker issues, we have to be creative. It's not as easy. I can't tell you, stop eating your produce. You need it for your health. That's how it is with animal products, right? Just stop eating them, don't contribute to that suffering. It's not that way when we look at farm workers. This year we also did a food drive for farm workers, where we had activists who are supporters all over the Bay Area and the South Bay, and thanks to those of you in this room who donated to that as well, where we had a truck full of all vegan food that we donated to the farm workers. We were part of a Farm Worker Appreciation Day in Salinas, and we were able to get all the food served at that event to be vegan. And the whole event was conducted in Spanish. It was explained that the event was not only all vegan, it was also zero waste. And I was able to go up and talk about not only the plight of animals, but also why our community should not be supporting the likes of McDonald's and KFC who don't care about our health. One of the other areas we try to get people to think about, especially if you're vegan, is where chocolate comes from. A lot of times you'll hear people talk about our chocolate's cruelty-free, or these are vegan foods, cruelty-free foods. And what we're trying to get people is to widen their circle of compassion to include human animals. Over 70% of the world's cacao comes from Western Africa. Here you have children who are working, and some of whom are slaves. How they get there in a variety of ways. So we're talking about areas such as Ghana and the Ivory Coast. Some of the poorest countries next to that are Burkina Faso and Mali. And I have to say right now how hard it is to talk about this and not recognize the people who are dying right now in this same area to Ebola, while we have done little to help them. But I digress. But basically, they get there in a variety of ways. Very, very poor countries nearby. And what happens is the children get there in a variety of ways. One is because the families are very, very poor, and they think their child is actually going to get work and actually make money in the chocolate industry and be able to send it back to the families. Other times, a child could be sold into it by a family member, again, thinking they're going to get some money from it. But worse are the children who are actually stolen from marketplaces, who are actually out with their families shopping in the marketplaces, and they're stolen and they're trafficked into the chocolate trade. I hope everybody can see this slide, because this is what got me moved by this issue. It was in 2000, and the BBC or some English channel did an expose on slavery that was taking place in the chocolate industry, and they interviewed one of the children that had escaped, and they asked the child, what would you say to Westerners who eat chocolate? And he said, tell them when they are eating chocolate, they are eating my flesh. And I thought, as a vegan, that's the same thing that a non-human animal would say to me. How can I continue to eat chocolate and know that I'm contributing to this type of suffering, this type of injustice that's still taking place right now as we sit here? Slavery, downright slavery, is still taking place in West Africa. Children have scars on their arms and their legs because they're using equipment that's actually illegal for them to be using, machetes. Any type of dangerous or hazardous equipment that children should not be using, but that's what they're forced to use in the cacao industry. They carry heavy bags of cacao. If they don't move fast enough, they're beaten. Approximately 1.8 million children in Ghana and the Ivory Coast alone are victims of the worst forms of child labor, including slavery. And again, I'm using the term slavery, and I'm talking about what maybe most of us think about when we think about slavery. We have children who are locked in at night. If they try to escape, they're beaten severely. Some of them disappear. Sometimes there's stories from those that have escaped talking about how in the very beginning they're beaten and beaten and beaten to try and break them before they actually start going out and picking the fields. So what Food Empowerment Project decided to do, because we knew people were going to be like, I'm not giving up my chocolate. This is an addiction. I need my chocolate. So we created a list of chocolates we do and don't recommend based on where they source their cacao. So this isn't going to be based on any certification. We're not going to tell you Fair Trade's okay. We're not going to tell you Rainforest Alliance is okay. Unfortunately, problems have been found in all of those industries. But what we're going to base it on is where this worst forms of child labor is the most prevalent, and that's in Western Africa. So as a vegan organization, chocolate on our list, they have to at least make a vegan chocolate. So we have the chocolates we recommend, and we have the chocolates we don't recommend, and we explain why. If a company is unwilling to be transparent, if they're telling us that we are above you, we may be a corporation, but we don't owe you anything to tell you where your chocolate comes from. They don't make our list because no one's above a moral issue like this. And we want to hold them accountable. So we tell you why we don't support these companies. And if they're transparent, I think that's just as bad. I think that's worse in some ways, because we have plenty of companies who tell us they're sourcing from West Africa. But it's these companies who won't be transparent who I feel have the most arrogance. And one of those companies, I like to get on my rant about these companies, I apologize. We have 2 apps that you can download, and they're free because we want people to make these choices if you care about these issues. So we have one for the Android and we have one for the Apple iPhone. But one of the arrogant companies I was talking about is Cliff Bar. Cliff Bar will not disclose to us where their chocolate comes from. They will not disclose to you where their chocolate comes from. We have a petition on our website. We ask you to please sign and share our petition. Tell Cliff Bar they are not above it. That they may be socially responsible, but they're not being responsible when it comes to this issue. And they need to answer for that. Just because it's cruelty-free, and just because it's vegan does not mean it's cruelty-free. Another company we want people to be aware of, and in fact we'll say people should not buy from this company, and that's Coca-Cola. And that's because they are privatizing water in countries such as India and in Chiapas, Mexico, where communities are not even able to afford water. Coke's over there pumping their water out, and they're also selling their soda for cheaper than they're selling the water. You have the fact that they're union busting in countries such as Colombia, where they're my lawyer doesn't want me to say this. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that they are killing union workers in Colombia. They are also time and time again under lawsuits in the United States for how they treat people of color and discrimination that workers of color face in Coca-Cola. They're not a company that deserves a dime. So one of the other areas we work on is access to healthy foods in communities of color and low-income communities. And some of you might be familiar with the term food deserts. We don't use the term food deserts so much because we feel that the problem of lack of access to healthy foods is not only an accessibility issue, but it's also a problem of cost. When you have people not making living wages, that's why we strongly, strongly encourage you to support any type of boost in a living wage, whether it be federal minimum wage or worker minimum wages at fast food or restaurants. We need to make sure that people are paid living wages because that's the right thing to do, but it also impacts their ability to eat healthy. In these communities where you have more liquor stores than you have healthy foods, you have higher rates of diabetes, type 2 diabetes. So what we try and do, this is a national problem. In fact, I've spoken on this issue internationally, and I can tell you it's a problem in New Zealand with the Maori, the indigenous people there. It's a problem with the First Nations people in Canada. And it's a problem here in the United States, definitely among the Native American population, but absolutely in our urban areas of the Black and Latino communities. People of color, again, this is another form of injustice taking place against communities of color, and that is the lack of access that we have to healthy foods in our neighborhoods. So what we did is we took a look where we were based in Santa Clara County, known as the Silicon Valley, where you have your Apple, you have your Google, you have a lot of wealth there, and you also have a history of orchards. Cesar Chavez, who many of you hopefully know is a labor organizer, co-founder of the United Farm Workers with Dolores Huerta, who is also a vegan. This is where he got his start, was in Santa Clara County in San Jose. And what we did is we decided, I lived in an area where I had 2 liquor stores across the street from each other, and if I wanted to get organic produce, I had to drive to another town. If you are familiar with the South Bay, I'm talking about Campbell. So it's not like going from like Santa Rosa to Petaluma, but it's still far away. So I decided, let's check to see if this very wealthy area has problems with access to healthy foods. So what we did is we got 200 volunteers. I wish we had 200 volunteers. We went out, we had volunteers check over 200 locations in Santa Clara County where we survey the high-income areas to the low-income areas, and we compared them. And this is just a draft, and I know it's hard to see, but this is our survey tool. They're about 14 pages long, and we surveyed for fresh produce, vegetables, meat and dairy alternatives, and just basic information about the stores. We put out our report on our findings, and what we found, what we actually found when we went out to the stores was we found that in the higher income areas, predominantly, obviously the white areas, sorry for lack of a better term, these grocery stores were open 24 hours and they had everything we were looking for. But the grocery stores located in communities of color were closing earlier, and most of our foods came from the little convenience stores where you had expired canned items, you had food that was rotten, You also had a huge problem and something we're trying to figure out how to tackle, but most of the produce in those are just small little benches. Maybe, again, we're talking about convenience stores / liquor stores. I mean, that's really what they are. May have like a little bunch of bananas at the cash register, but there's no prices on them. So whoever's behind the counter decides how much they're going to charge you for something. It could be different for you to you. It also puts people who don't speak English at an automatic disadvantage because they're less likely to ask the price of something if they don't speak the language. We also found that the higher income areas had, basically it was not even, according to our researchers, it wasn't even statistically significant to count the organic produce available in the communities of color. You also had 14 times more access to frozen vegetables in higher income communities than you did in lower income communities. Little music for our... we also, like I said, as a vegan organization, we looked at meat and dairy alternatives because we believe everybody has the right to eat their ethics. Everybody has the right to say, I don't want to contribute to this type of suffering. But in addition to that, I mean, there's undeniable evidence out there. I mean, just look at people here, look at the ADA, the American Dietetic Association, the fact that eating more fruits and vegetables is far more healthier than a diet full of animal consumption. But added to that, you have that a majority of people of color are lactose intolerant. 95% of Asians, 60 to 80% of African Americans, 50 to 80% of Latinos are lactose intolerant. So why is it that in our communities, we don't have these dairy alternatives? Why, in fact, are the foods they're putting in our communities there to make us sick? We call this a form of food apartheid, when in actuality, the foods that are in our neighborhoods are there and they're making us sick. We also found the problem, and I'm going to have to speed my talking up a little bit. I know I can get on my little soapbox about stuff, is the fact that according to the statistics, according to the government statistics on this stuff, if you look on the column on the left, if I was a grocery store owner or if I was a policymaker, I would look at the graph on the left and I would say, the higher income and low income areas in Santa Clara County are pretty much the same. We don't need to worry about lack of access to healthy foods because they have this here. The reality is the column on the right. The problem is these little liquor stores / convenience stores are being counted as grocery stores no different than Safeway and Whole Foods. And that's a huge problem because that's not how it is. We're going to try and get better statistics on that. Again, talking a little bit faster. What we did after that is when you're looking at the issues of access, one of the things that happens a lot is that well-intentioned government agencies, well-intentioned NGOs go into communities of color and they say, this is what you need. You need a farmer's market. You need this, you need that. And they're not talking to the community. This stuff's going to fail unless you talk to the community and find out what it is that they want. What's going to work is what they know is going to work. So we did focus groups, all conducted in Spanish in San Jose, to find out what does the community want? What do you think is going to work? What would help you? And what are the impediments to you? Now, in doing these focus groups, we paid all the members $50 for their time, fed them a vegan meal from Flacos, if you're familiar with Flacos in the East Bay, vegan Mexican food. And we found out, being there, that a lot of the people in these focus groups, at least 2 out of the 3 focus groups, they had kids who were vegan. And they didn't know how to feed their kids, and they were very interested in the issue. Our report is going to be coming out in the next few weeks on our focus groups. And the interesting findings that we found, which is that a lot of the people, again, these were all conducted in Spanish, a lot of the people were immigrants. And in fact, they were used to eating healthier where they came from. So here they moved to the United States, and they're being told to cook with tomato sauce when they're used to cooking with fresh tomatoes. So in fact, they're eating not as healthy as they were before. So a lot of interesting information came out, and we look forward to going public with that. We've since started doing our work in Vallejo. We were asked by one of the founding members of the Black Panther Party to take a look at what was taking place in Vallejo. We're working with Filipino community activists there, including the Vallejo People's Garden. And this is really blurry because the woman at the convenience store was like, "Are you taking a picture?" I was like, "No." So it's really blurry. I apologize for that. But this is the amount of produce that's available at one of the convenience stores in Vallejo. This is what they have. And this is the vast, vast, vast majority of what's in Vallejo. It was worse than I was expecting, and it was worse than San Jose. worse than Santa Clara County. But this was the beacon of beauty we found in Vallejo as well. This is a grocery store owned by a Latino family. And it's in this middle, it's like a little oasis there. After looking and going to liquor store after liquor store, just to finding a grocery store, a community-owned grocery store. And that's really what we want to see. That's what we see the solutions as. We see the solutions as people growing their own food if they can, being empowered by growing their own food, and also cooperatives. I recently spoke Wednesday or Tuesday at the Roanoke Park Planning Commission meeting to fight the expansion of Walmart, trying to encourage them. Mind you, if you know Roanoke Park, it's like this big and we have 2 Walmarts there. To try and encourage them that what this city and what all communities should be looking for are building cooperatives. Because the money stays in our community, then it's not going to Arkansas. And it empowers our own community, our own people to become entrepreneurs and to learn and to have pride. A couple of issues I'm going to touch on really quick, literally very quick, is that we do have 2 new sections on our website. If y'all have been following us, we have a new section on coffee. We make recommendations on the coffee companies that we encourage people to support. And all the problems in the coffee industry. Well, we have the chocolate stuff on our website too. And bananas. And I hate myself for the banana section because I don't drink coffee, but I do eat bananas. So bear with us on the banana. We stretched our limits a little bit because the one banana company that we feel the most comfortable recommending does not sell bananas on the West Coast. So we had to break a little bit because we'd rather you buy from these companies than Dole or Chiquita. So we hope you'll read up on that as well. It's a fantastic section on our website. And I can say that because I didn't write it. It's written by a volunteer. We also have a section on our website about donating food and how to donate food. Because a lot of times people think donating food, it makes them feel good, and that's really fantastic. But you're supposed to be donating food to help those communities. And the way you help those communities is by making sure that the food that you're donating to them is culturally sensitive to that area and that it's food that they can take. So we have tips on how to do that. We also have a new project. We're starting a project. Our name's Food Empowerment Project, so I'm trying not to call it a project. A new effort we're starting called Sonoma County Chicken Save. And it's inspired by the work of Toronto Pig Save. If people aren't familiar with that, but you're familiar with the photographer Joanne MacArthur, a lot of her pictures have been taken with Toronto Pig Save. And what it is we're going to start doing weekly events or vigils at Petaluma Poultry in Petaluma. And we will be having signs out there because people shouldn't be allowed to drive by these facilities and not think about what's happening back there. So we want people to think about it. Think about one of our signs has a chicken on it and it says, "I'm someone who wants to live." And we want to remind people that these animals do want to live and they have the right to live. So we have a sign-up sheet in the little indoor room over there. All of this information's on our website. But if you want to sign up, we really want people to come out and support. And we know it's going to be it for forever. We just can't let people drive by atrocities that are taking place anymore in our backyards. So we're starting Sonoma County Chicken Save, and we really hope you'll join us. So what you can do. One is, if you have access to healthy foods, that's the thing, is that it's not as easy for everybody to go vegan, and we recognize that. Think back to the picture I showed you of Vallejo. It's not that easy for everybody. But if you have the access and you can go vegan, please do. Lend your voices to the needs of farm workers. Again, you can join our email list, support. Right now there's something we just posted about pesticide exposure and trying to help farm workers, not expose kids who are under 18 years old to agricultural chemicals. Buy organic when you can. We know organic's expensive, so maybe rotate it out. Just try and buy one thing organic if you can. If you can buy all organic, it's one less bad thing to happen to the farm workers. If you think about it in terms, if you're vegan and you know organic milk doesn't mean the cows are treated any better, same thing for the farm workers. It doesn't mean their living conditions are any better. It doesn't mean any of that's any better, but it means one less bad thing's happening to them. They're not being exposed to these chemicals. Use our chocolate list. If you care about not supporting what's taking place in West Africa, please use our chocolate list. If a company you buy from you like is not on our list, email us. We're going to contact the company for you. We update the list about once a month. And please sign our petition against Cliff Bar. Boycott companies such as Coca-Cola. Speak out about the forms of injustices that take place. Your words make a difference. sign up to our e-alerts, and again, we have a table inside. If you're not vegan, we have a monthly newsletter that we will mail to you. If you want to go vegan and you're committed to go vegan, it's our food retention newsletter to help people go and stay vegan. You get one issue a month for a year. Because we are in tune to communities who don't really have a lot of privilege, don't have 24/7 access to the internet, we make it available in print form so we can mail it to you. Each issue covers an animal, a rescue story, has recipes, has nutrition Q&A, it has support Q&As, and it also talks about other ways that you can make a difference with your food choices. We have our website, foodispower.org. It's mostly in English and in Spanish. We're trying to raise money to get the rest of it translated into Spanish. We also have veganmexicanfood.com, which is fully in English and in Spanish. And if you have any recipes you want to donate, we will happily take them. And I just want to ask you, try not to be overwhelmed by everything I've just told you about. Try to look at these as opportunities. Opportunities to live your ethics, to eat your ethics, and to help make a difference. Because your individual food choices, what you make these food choices an individual has an impact. But our collective voices together can really start to change the world. So thank you. Well, no, let's see, come on. I'll try. Questions? Okay.
Hi, one of the number one issues that come up when I talk about veganism is people who aren't, but who are, buying organic and they buy free range and grass-fed. What would be a very succinct, like one sentence way of conveying to them that there's barely any difference?
What I usually say is that if you don't want to cause any suffering to animals, then the only thing you can do is don't eat them and don't engage in any type of exploitation of animals, because really that's the only way. And really most people do, I like to think, especially if you're in this room, being a compassionate person, that really that's the only way to make sure, because free range and all that, they're still killed. And so to just remind them, if that, kind of go directly to the heart of why they're doing it to begin with, is because they don't want to cause too much suffering to the animal, that the only way they can really do that is to not eat them. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Hi, Lauren. So your presentation is awesome and it's an inspiration to us. So we are holding a nationwide day of action and awareness tomorrow to protest the fact that Whole Food Market is introducing yet another animal species in their meat case. So, Lauren, as a vegan and as someone who has success, for example, getting duck meat off Trader Joe's shelves, do you think it's important that vegan communities care about this issue? And do you have any tips for the campaign?
Sure. Yes, the events are tomorrow, and you can find that on the website.
Yes, action. SaveAMoney.org.
Okay, good. Well, thanks for starting the campaign, and thanks for everybody who's working on it. I think that, as a vegan, I want Whole Foods to go vegan and not to sell any animal products. And like all animals raised and killed for food, it doesn't matter. We always need to encourage people, first and foremost, to go vegan. But we have the responsibility as well to prevent more animals from being added on that list of animals who are killed. And I think that we need to take every opportunity that we can to say not one more animal being added to the list of Whole Foods. And to get one, when I did the duck campaign, it was like, let's get rid of all these little other industries that are cropping up so then we can focus on the big ones, the chickens, the fish, and everybody else. So if we can try and get some of this other ones put out of the way, we need to do that. In terms of the campaign, I think everybody really needs to contact Whole Foods, and in a polite way. These are human beings who work there. We don't need to treat them other than that. They are people. They are workers. This is their job. But we do need to let them know that, we shop here or you don't. Hopefully you shop there, because if you shop there, you're going to have more, they're going to listen to you more. If you don't shop there, why would they listen to you? If you shop there, they're going to listen to you. So you ask them to really reconsider this decision, and you'd like them to stop selling rabbit. And I think that that's something that everybody can do And again, just going out and reaching out to the public, I think, is really, really important. Thanks for doing it.
I have two questions. One, and the publication you're having come out in a couple of weeks on the focus group. Can we get to see that online?
Yes.
At your site, probably.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other thing is, you talked about an important goal is to build cooperatives. Can you give us an example that we can read about online somewhere?
Yeah. Well, I don't know about you can read it online, but there is People's Grocery in Oakland that is a cooperative. There's actually Community Market in Santa Rosa, too. These are worker-owned cooperatives. There's a number of cooperatives, and I can give you more information. There's a whole area in Basque Spain that's like everything's cooperatives, which is really exciting. But yeah, and I don't know that Mandela Parkway in Oakland is a cooperative, but they were recently, there was some type of government
I think it is.
in Mandela.
Yes,
And they were actually highlighted recently as a really fantastic example of what can happen and what can work. And, you know, it's about empowering our communities. But we do, our report will be, I'll be so happy when this report comes out. But it'll be available in English and in Spanish. And it'll be on our website, and we'll also have some copies for print. The first report we have is also available on our website. Santa Clara University was fantastic. It did GIS maps for us as well. We have a copy of the report on our table as well. That's in English and in Spanish as well, but we don't have it printed in Spanish.
So I understand the ethical argument against killing animals for consumption, but what about then, or I guess not vegans, but vegetarians who eat eggs and milk if it's coming from a nice farm? Is there a cruelty argument for that, or is that?
Yeah, I mean, what I was saying before is that the babies, in order to produce milk, the cow has to be pregnant. Just like any other mammal, that cow has to be pregnant in order to produce milk. So what happens is, what happens to all of her babies then? So if the baby is a male, he's sometimes taken to the veal, shipped out of state, in California at least. California is now the #1 dairy producing state. The baby shipped out of state to be raised for veal in a crate 4x4 chained by the neck where he can't turn around. If she's a female, she's also put in a crate so small that, and sometimes she can't turn around, sometimes she can't walk. I've videotaped females chained by the neck who have died because of exposure in the Central Valley, where they've kicked up their water bowl or their food bowl, and no one's out there to take care of them. So there's this surplus, right? Because they don't have anything to do with the males. The females are just going to go right back and join their mamas in the herd. But that cow has to be producing milk. If you ever go to the Petaluma auction house, you can see the baby male cows there with their umbilical cords still wet after being taken away from their moms. So inherently, dairy is cruel. I should say cow milk, not soy milk or almond milk, but, well, I don't know how that's true. Anyway, I digress. But basically, it's the separation of the mom and the babies is something that is inescapable for these industries. And eggs, I mean, it doesn't matter how they're raised. The male chicks are always killed. Male chicks aren't going to lay eggs. So the industry has zero use for them whatsoever. So they're all going to be killed. So unfortunately, that's this perception that the industry wants to give off, but it's all part of the same industry. There's no way it's not.
Well, I know people in Sonoma County that just raise chickens on their own farm and then eat the eggs from those chickens.
It depends on where they're getting those babies from. Were those baby, they're beginning ones? Do they come from a hatchery? Where they ship through the mail? Where a majority, they have to pack in the chicks through the mail because they mail them, they put them through the post office, USPS. And they have to put enough in there, assuming that some of them are going to die. So if they're still coming from the hatchery, they're still coming from a place where the male chicks are killed and that they're probably being mailed through the post office. So again, we're an industry that doesn't care about humans or non-human animals. And so it's just an industry that's just best to stay clear of. In our opinion, again, we're an ethically based organization, and everything we do and say, that it's not, it just so happens that it's also healthy, It just so happens that these industries are also hurting human animals. But more than not, our feeling is that we don't need to take anybody's life in order to be healthy, so why do it? So, all right, well, thanks. Oh, one more question, great.
Yeah, I looked on your list for the chocolate chips that I like
Oh.
to use, and it was on the don't use list. But I found that they're not divided by what kinds of products?
They're not. They're not. We divide them by company name. But people will email us all the time and say, and it's always about the chocolate chips, always about the chocolate chips. So I have a list that I can mail you of the companies that make chocolate chips. I can tell you right offhand, Equal Exchange makes 2 different kinds of vegan chocolate chips that you can order online, and we trust them implicitly. Other chefs have, because I don't cook whatsoever, but chefs have said sometimes they'll just buy the bars and just break up the bars. But I've been told that's not the same as chips, but undiscerning taste buds like mine don't know. So. Yeah, but you can email me and I can give you the list of chocolate chips. On our table, I have my business card. And yeah, go by our table for sure. Cool. Well, thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming.